All right. Well, good morning, everyone. The time is now 9:35 a.m. on May 7th, 2025, and I'm calling our meeting to order, and we'll first ask for the roll call.
Chair Jacobs,
Here.
Vice Chair Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Caballero, absent. Planning Commissioner Cameron, Commissioner Lee, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and Commissioner Valentine.
Present.
And alternate Mayor Williams.
I'm here.
And I'd also like to request an excused absence for Councilmember Caballero and Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
So moved. Second.
Okay, and all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimously approved. Next, we have adjustments to the agenda. Okay, and none, so we will move on to announcements. Any announcements? Okay. Approval of the minutes for April 2nd, 2025. Are there any adjustments or revisions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
We've had a motion from Councilmember Baker, second by Mayor Williams. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the minutes are unanimously approved. City and County Manager priority items.
Good morning. The city does not have any priority items today.
Good morning. The county has no priority items.
Okay, thank you to our awesome attorneys. Item number 5, Vision Zero and the UDO. Robin Schultz, Principal Planner. Thank you.
Good morning, y'all. So this morning, we're going to be giving you an update on how Vision Zero interacts with the new UDO rewrite. With me, I have our Vision Zero coordinator, Lauren Grove, who's going to start us off. And I'll hand it over to her.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Lauren Grove. I'm the Vision Zero coordinator here with the City of Durham. And I'm here to talk about the recently approved Vision Zero action plan and discuss in partnership with Robin some of the intended changes to our land use planning practices that prioritize safe streets. Whoop. There we go. That looked like at the same time. So just kind of taking a step back, Vision Zero is a global strategy to improve street safety with a goal to end traffic deaths and serious injuries. So it started in Sweden in the 90s, and about 20 years later, US cities started to formally adopt this commitment. What you're seeing here is a map of some of those cities. This is part of the Vision Zero network, which is a national network that collaborates and brings these cities together. So not every city that has made that commitment is shown here. These are just the ones that have gone through the Vision Zero network. But Durham was the first city in North Carolina in 2017 to formally make this commitment. And in April of 2025, just last month, there we go. Just last month, approved its first Vision Zero action plan. So this is a 5-year plan, and it's based on 4 key inputs. One of those is community feedback from our Vision Zero input map, where we talk to a lot of folks in the community about their concerns on streets or intersections where, maybe they had concerns while they were walking, biking, driving, taking the bus. That is part of the some of the priorities here in the action plan. We've also included historic crash data from 2017 to 2023 to identify where patterns of fatal and serious injury crashes are occurring, as well as best practices like our safe systems approach and public health framework, and team guidance from our Vision Zero Working Group and Vision Zero Coalition, both of whom formed in the summer of 2024 and met to help develop this plan, and will continue to meet in a new fashion as part of an implementation group. And so a lot of this guides our strategic approaches to the goals that we have committed to, which is to reduce traffic deaths and serious injuries by 50% by 2035 and end traffic deaths and serious injuries by 2045. The plan really helps to address the fact that we are trending in the wrong direction when it comes to traffic deaths and serious injuries. So what you're seeing here in this bar graph, in orange are serious injuries, and in red are traffic deaths from 2014. So in the last 10 years, about 22 people have been killed every year in traffic crashes in the city of Durham. So this is just the city, not the county. And as you can see, those trend lines, we are going up, which is in the wrong direction. And the last 5 years in particular have been more deadly than that first set of 5 years from 2014 to 2018. So the plan is really focused on identifying the patterns that are associated with this upward trend, starting to reverse that trend and eliminate the trend altogether. And so when we look at where people are dying and being seriously injured, what you're seeing here is a map of our high injury network. This is an analysis that a lot of Vision Zero cities perform to identify corridors where people are dying and being seriously injured year after year. And what you're seeing is that 10% of roadways in the city of Durham account for 74% of traffic deaths and serious injuries. This is the time period from 2016 to 2023. And you can see that there are corridors in this network that account for about 130 centerline miles in the city of Durham. This is where, again, people are involved in crashes that are leading to fatalities and serious injuries. This is where we want to focus our resources. We know that crashes are happening in a lot of areas in Durham. With our limited resources, we really need to focus in on the patterns and where we're seeing reoccurring traffic deaths and serious injuries. And so this high injury network really helps us to target our limited resources where the problem is highest. And so I just want to talk a little bit about the framework. How do we start to address the high injury network? How do we start to reverse that upward trend? We really want to root ourselves in a public health approach to this problem. So what that means is putting our resources into solutions that we know are going to have the biggest population benefit. And what you're seeing here is a safe systems pyramid. And this is modeled after a public health approach, the hierarchy of controls, where at the bottom of the pyramid, those solutions are where we're going to have the highest population benefit. And you can see it's called socioeconomic factors. That is the public health framework there. And what we heard from our community, what we heard from our team guidance is that really is about better policy, better transportation and land use policy, because we know that this impacts so much of the city, the community, the policies that we put in place. So we really want to address those land use and transportation policies that we have in place and potentially create new policy that improves our practices to prioritize safer streets. And so that really is about the Unified Development Ordinance, our biggest leading policy that we have here for the city and county that guides a lot of our land use practices. It also has street design standards within it, how our developers building new streets. We really want to make sure that we're building it right the first time, and right with our Vision Zero commitment is that they are safe for all road users. So we see a really big opportunity with the current UDO rewrite to address that. And there's a lot of other components that Robin and I will talk about in a minute related to that. Moving up sort of in that blue, the built environment, that's again where we're really going to have a big population health impact if we focus in on safer infrastructure. So I mentioned safe street design that's in the UDO, but we also want to focus on how we can retroactively address that high injury network that you see. So how can we address those corridors with the tools that we have to make them safer. A lot of that is about just better infrastructure. So we want to get a team together to perform road safety audits and really identify the problem on these corridors, identify solutions, work with our partners, especially at NCDOT. If you saw that map and are familiar with some of these streets, you'll probably note that a lot of them are owned by our partners at NCDOT. So bringing them into the fold with these road safety audits and coming up with formal reports that identify solutions. We want to create a quick build program. We've heard loud and clear from our community that we're really good at planning, maybe could do better at the implementation piece and getting these projects on the ground. So we want to get more efficient at addressing the issue. So creating a toolkit of different types of measures that we can deploy fairly quickly in about a year, working alongside the community to address the problem more urgently and with the urgency that's needed. And then finally, in that built environment, a speed management plan that looks at speed limits and current speeds citywide and helps to address how we can reduce speed limits, but also, again, change the infrastructure to ensure that that new speed limit is self-enforcing. And as you go up the pyramid, you start to rely more on individual effort, meaning things like stop signs, signals, even education campaigns. We're really relying on the individual to adhere to those things. So where our policy and our built environment components are more of a population impact, where everybody experiences that as a whole, as that benefit. As you move up the pyramid, you really rely on individual effort. That is not where we want to put our resources. It's important. We know that education needs to be a part of this, but not the whole of it. So that's why we're focusing on this pyramid, really investing in resources towards the bottom, but knowing that a lot of these components will be part of it. And this would not be possible without this dotted line that you see on the side of the pyramid, agency coordination. So I briefly mentioned the necessary coordination with NCDOT, but there are a lot of other partners that need to be at the table for this. The city cannot do this alone. We need many people to partner with us to achieve this goal. And so that's really what each of these levels of the pyramid are about, is coordinating with folks to be able to plug in with the resources that they have. And when we do all of this, you can see at the bottom, there's the population impact, that culture of safety. This is something we heard from our working group, from the community, that Durham does not have that culture of safety. It does not feel that way, that we are really prioritizing safer streets. And that when you come to Durham, everybody just knows to slow down, to look out for people walking, biking. People walking and biking feel safe here. It's clear in the policies that we set and the infrastructure that we build that this really is about a culture of safety. So all of this combined will amount to a better culture of safety here in Durham. So with that said, I'm going to have Robin talk specifically about two of the actions that are in our action plan. The very first one is updating our land use code. And then the second one is about a street design manual.
Yeah, good morning again. So as Lauren said, this is going to take like a lot of folks doing a lot of work. And so the first thing being the land use code that is pretty firmly in planning. So we've been working with Lauren to sort of talk through these things, especially as they relate to the new UDO, sort of the hottest land use topic lately. So I did want to talk sort of specifically around three different things within the new UDO that we're doing to help address this, like specific to Vision Zero action plan goals. So the first is really thinking about establishing new zoning districts. This is happening in a few different ways, right? We're rezoning the entire county, but I think the first of which is really establishing the mixed use zoning districts. The RX and the CX districts are, vastly different from what we have now, really trying to encourage and incentivize a different type of development, and really focusing those within those transit opportunity areas that are outlined in the comp plan. Really trying to focus on providing the density needed for that ridership, right? So that folks are driving less because ultimately the land use code really needs to be updated so that we're reducing what's called VMT, our vehicle miles traveled, right? This is a huge indicator and a huge tenet of Vision Zero is decreasing the amount of time that people are actually driving, right? So part of that is that sort of density and moving towards transit ridership, things of that nature. We're doing a lot of upzoning within the urban growth boundary, right? That has been adopted as a line that says, you know, this is where we're trying to grow to. So if we're trying to densify within the urban growth boundary, then, you know, we also are changing, you know, the residential zoning districts, which allow more density than currently is allowed. So thinking about that is sort of getting people to the density required for ridership, right? And then I think the other sort of arm of the new zoning district are really thinking about, you know, we've said that we're moving towards a form-based code, right? So we're thinking a little bit less about like use and density and a little bit more on the built environment. So really thinking about how do we integrate those commercial uses within residential, you know, any sort of neighborhood service, really focusing on how we get folks walking more, right? So the transit arm from like density, but also like how do we get people out of the car? And part of that, those are the two arms of the same problem, right? Making sure that people can walk places or making sure that people can take the bus. So those are two major things that we're trying to tackle through the UDO in terms of the zoning district. Sort of lastly, is we're updating the development standards for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit improvements. This is not only us trying to update our current standards, but it's also thinking a little bit more about standards that we don't currently have, right? That really affect how pedestrians interact with the built environment. So some of the things that we're doing are thinking about building placement and parking. We have way more requirements for buildings to be towards the street, parking in the rear, things of that nature. We're also thinking a lot about drive aisle widths, driveway spacing, right? Trying to decrease the amount of time that pedestrians spend in places that are automobile focused. And so this is going to take a lot of coordination between transportation and public works and us, and we're working on that. And it is as fun as coordinating always is. So that's sort of where all of that is sort of standing in terms of the built environment, because what we really want to do is note that Vision Zero isn't about teaching people to be better drivers, right? It's about creating a policy and a built environment that decrease the opportunities for traffic deaths to happen. Sort of lastly is thinking about the multimodal transportation impact analysis. I know you all have heard about this, but so we have submitted a pre-budget request for this. Essentially, transportation impact analyses right now, TIAs, allow us to require transportation improvements as they relate to automobiles right now. And so this process will allow us to require you know, different bike, ped, transit improvements as part of new developments, which would, you know, new development obviously impacts that infrastructure. So having a mechanism to require those improvements would be, you know, just great in terms of moving towards Vision Zero. That's both an action item in the Vision Zero action plan as well as the comprehensive plan. So secondarily is thinking about the street design manual. So obviously the Vision Zero action plan was approved this year, last month. The new UDO is scheduled to go hopefully in 2026. TBD. You know, and then the street design manual adopted sometime around 2028 per the schedule. So what we're trying to do with this is not supplant the need for the manual. The manual is going to be comprehensive and have hopefully everything we'll ever need in terms of street design. I'm not going to look at Lauren. I'm just going to assume that what I'm saying is correct. And so, but what we want to do, right, if we're thinking about implementation, is provide street typologies for developers for the streets that are getting constructed most frequently right now for everything that's being permitted before 2028, right? So if we know that we're densifying, how do we get those new streets that are NACDO compliant right now? And so what we're doing is focusing mostly on new streets within residential subdivisions, because these are the streets that are being actually constructed by developers most often. So trying to come up with a stopgap measure to do that until 2028. And so right now, Lauren and I have been working on that, and it'll be in module 3 of the new UDO, hopefully. But you'll see those as they get a little bit more closer to complete. So just to go over this, Vision Zero is a wide-ranging plan, and there are a lot of parts to it, and this is just one small part. I've known Lauren a good while now, and I've heard her say this multiple times, that it's not when Lauren achieves Vision Zero, it's when we achieve Vision Zero. So it's been really great to work with her on thinking about how we can incorporate these changes into the UDO right now. What are the sort of things that we can sort of immediately deploy, right? So just thinking, this is long-term, but this is what we're trying to do in the current moment. And just to sort of wrap up, Vision Zero resources are at the top, where you can look at the adopted plan as well as the input map and the high injury network. New UDO resources are on Engaged Durham, Module 1 standards, so where we're actually putting, mixed use development, all that sort of fun stuff, the use table. I know we've gone through that with y'all, but Module 2 has also been updated and posted for the public. So with that said, that completes the presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren and Robin. This is an amazing plan, and so exciting. Not only because this is about saving lives, but it's also about creating a better community for everyone. And as somebody who's been involved with land use since I was on the Planning Commission in 2005, so 20 years before I became a county commissioner 12 years ago, it feels really good that feels like we're finally talking about land use and transportation together, and finally doing it here, locally with the UDO, with this, and also, with the MPO, with our MTP 2055, which I know we're going to have a presentation on Vision Zero with that and the upcoming MTP. So thank you for helping make this all doable for something that can feel really overwhelming. So I'll stop and open it up to questions, comments. Commissioner Vice Chair Lee.
Thank you for this. I appreciate the plan. I'm curious, the statistics that you showed about the deaths, how the trending lines, the injuries and the deaths, were those encompassing of people just wrecking their cars, or was that pedestrian car injuries?
Yeah, so that is all types of crashes,
Okay.
including all road users. To qualify for a crash that is reported, it has to involve a motor vehicle. So it could be just a driver involved crash, but it could be also a driver and a pedestrian, a driver and a person biking.
Okay. And so I understand what the plan you all laid out, what you want to do as far as, road design and all of these things. But I'm curious, I would imagine most of the contributing factors of bad behavior by drivers, speeding, you're speeding, reckless driving, maybe this or that, right? But you also mentioned that it's not about teaching better driving. That this plan isn't about teaching better driving or changing those behaviors, making the infrastructure better, right? I'm curious how do we get to zero without the behavior changes? Because I don't see this necessarily going down to where we meeting these goals if we're not figuring out a way to change behaviors. Now, I understand human nature. People are going to drive crazy. That's just the way it is. But I'm concerned that, redesigning or like creating design policies doesn't really get to the root problem of what you're trying to solve. And if it may reduce, I don't know that it really gets us to zero. So I'm curious about how that matches, without some sort of behavior work around behavior changing and driving in Durham, and not just the design of the facilities or the infrastructure?
Yeah, so two things. There's been a lot of research and a lot of cities that have shown when we focus on our built environment and the environment and changing that, we see a lot of safety benefits. So you can look at cities in the US, like Hoboken and Alexandria, Virginia, who have achieved zero traffic deaths with a focus on safer infrastructure. Now, that doesn't stand alone. So like I showed in that pyramid at the top is education. We're not saying none of it at all. What they did in Alexandria and Hoboken is work alongside the community and show how this infrastructure is intended to work when we're doing newer infrastructure. So it's not that we're saying we're not going to do any education at all. That will be part of the infrastructure and policy piece, is really working alongside folks to, educate on what this intended project is supposed to do, right? And what to look out for and how to use it. There are other opportunities, standalone opportunities to talk about driver education, right? How can we incorporate a lot of the Vision Zero principles into North Carolina driver education? But for the city of Durham resources, we really want to hone in on that infrastructure piece, knowing that education will be a part of it. I think what we're trying to say is a standalone campaign or those resources targeted to just that is not something that we feel will give us the greatest benefit, right, in the more immediate future.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Baker.
I've talked to a few people who looked at the Vision Zero plan and remarked that it was sort of short and there didn't seem to be a lot in there. And what I told them was, it's an incredible document because it lays out so simply what the problem is and so clearly what needs to be done. And there's in the timeline, in the action plan, the actions that need to take place, exactly when they need to take place, and when they realistically can take place to move our city in a different direction. And so I want to uphold that document as a really fantastic document and really great plan. And it says, here's where we're going now. We have a problem. Here are the steps that we need to take. And they really are. I mean, they've really hit at the heart of what needs to be done. And then, we'll do those actions and then we'll see where we are and what needs to happen after that. But I think that it just really clearly lays out some of those issues. Sometimes when I'm driving down the road and I see someone who's kind of driving a little dangerously, I look over at them and sometimes just think, you probably don't even want to be driving. You don't even want to be on the road. I try not to blame everyone who's a poor driver, but everything is harder and more dangerous when we have people on the road who don't want to be there because of the built environment that they exist in, that they live in, that was built by past generations, and we live in that built environment, and we leave to future generations the built environment that we are creating. This is a departure from the status quo. It's a line that we draw on a timeline that says we are going to start doing something different. And we're going to start doing something different in the public right of way, but we're also going to start doing something different on private land. Public right of way is incredibly important because it is 1/3 of all of the land in our city. They're not just corridors to travel down. They're also places and spaces where activity happens and kids play and people do things. Streets are really important civic spaces. And when you go and visit a city, it is the space through which you understand and view and experience that city. I am really excited about the street typologies and the design manual. As you said, it's a lot easier to do this right the first time than to go back on existing infrastructure and redo it. I mean, that is so expensive. Infrastructure is so incredibly expensive. We got to get it right the first time. I just want to say, I encourage you to pursue the very best practices on the street typologies. And I know that there are tough conversations I'm sure that you're having and will have involving, departments with large vehicles, schools, solid waste, transit, all of that. I want to encourage you to have those tough conversations. And if you need help from the political side of things, then reach out to the city and the county for that, and we can help coordinate those conversations. And that's everything from street width to curb radii and all the devil's in the details on making streets safer. Also, just making sure that we don't waste space within the right of way. It is such precious space. When developers are constructing a new street, we're asking a lot of them to construct and dedicate new right of way to the public, and then we have to take that over and maintain it. We need to make sure that we're using every foot within the right of way as best as possible, so that we're not just kind of throwing out additional pavement and maybe we'll do something with that in the future, but we really have a plan for how we're going to use every foot. I also want us to make sure that we're thinking about the ratio within the right of way, the width of that right of way. Let's say it's 50 feet, making sure that it's better split evenly between auto users and non-auto users, because I think, historically what we've seen is just 90% of the right of way is for automobiles or other types of vehicles. Let's try and get to 50-50. That would be really fantastic. And expand the usability of those spaces. And then the last thing I'll say, and this is actually not specific to Vision Zero and the way that we're looking at transportation within the Vision Zero action plan and transportation infrastructure. But you mentioned a little bit of the upzoning within the core of our city. And because that was mentioned, I just want to mention that, again, I'm hoping that we pursue an upzoning through a density bonus and not necessarily sort of universally upzoning everything, especially because of the legislature. They're taking away our ability to downzone. It's sort of a one-way. Once it's done, we kind of lose that. And streamlining that process to make it really easy to upzone through to upzone on a parcel through a density bonus. And then also making sure that we're looking at avoiding the unintended consequences of displacement in many of our neighborhoods, especially where we have neighborhoods where some of our affordable housing is single-family homes. So just wanted to applaud this work. I mean, this is such a game changer. This is a paradigm change in our city. And I want to applaud you and keep encouraging you to do all the work that you're doing. And I'm so excited for being able to sit up there and vote on and adopt the changes that you end up proposing. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Yes, Commissioner Valentine.
Chairwoman, thank you for recognizing me. And so I guess I join other members here this morning in congratulating you on this initiative. So my question is that you've identified that there's 22 deaths per year over the last 10 years. And so relative to other municipalities, where are we starting relative or comparably? So that's the first question. And the second question is, what are the demographics of those 22 deaths? What does that look like? Because I believe, similar to my colleague, Dr. Lee, that education is a key component in this, and I don't want us to miss that.
Sure. So, Robin, I might ask you there is a slide with the demographic information that I did not show, if you don't mind queuing that up. So to your first question about where are we starting relative to other cities. So I would say the pandemic really impacted cities in the US similarly. A lot of cities saw upward trends in traffic deaths and serious injuries. So they are experiencing a graph similar to what I showed. where there is a massive spike during the years of the COVID pandemic. That is because there were fewer people on the roadway, which meant the people that were driving had a lot of roadway to work with. And when you have wider roads and not as much traffic, you can go a lot faster. And speed is a big contributor to traffic deaths and serious injuries. And a lot of cities saw this. So we are in a similar position to other cities in that we are in recovery mode from that. And we're trying to see what are the trends now that we're mostly out of that pandemic and we're back to normal traffic levels. If you look at our fatal crash rate, which is a comparison of the number of people that have died in crashes and the population growth, we are still going upward. So even though Durham has seen population growth, we've still seen a trend of increasing relative to the number of people that have been fatally injured. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head for other North Carolina cities, but I do know that is something that we should note, that sometimes we can look at the population growth and then say, well, we're not increasing alongside that, but Durham is. So we can certainly look into some other North Carolina cities if that is of interest to kind of compare that specific trend there. But yeah, I do know that we are in a similar spot with a lot of the other Vision Zero cities in terms of trying to recover from the pandemic.
And I just want to interject.
Sure.
When we have the presentation from the MPO on Vision Zero, they actually have the data. We were shared this at our last meeting that shows that unfortunately, even compared to Chatham and Orange County, our numbers are higher. So we do have that.
Yes, thank you. That's a great point. Robin and crew for getting this. I had this back of pocket slide that we showed at our city council meeting in March when we reviewed the Vision Zero action plan. And this is speaks to your question about who is involved by race. So you can see that from 2017 to 2023, there are a disproportionate, that traffic deaths and serious injuries disproportionately impact people of color, specifically Black people and Hispanic people. And so, even though the population of, this is in the city of Durham, by the way, the population is 36%, we're seeing 53% of serious injuries and 49% of fatalities involve Black persons. So it is a disproportionate impact.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. This has been a topic of discussion for a while. Thank you for acknowledging, Madam Chair. So I know you showed a map earlier about where these accidents are happening. I didn't have my glasses on then. I just knew that there was a map on the screen.
Yeah.
But do you have like an XY comparison of that data demographically versus this right here?
Not in this presentation, but we can certainly follow up with that information. That's fairly easy to show.
So off the top of your head, do you know, like, since it's overwhelmingly people of color, where those are happening?
I can say, so the yellow that is shown on the map there, that's our transportation equity emphasis areas. That uses a lot of demographic data from the census, including race. And what we're showing here is areas that have a lack of transportation infrastructure or households that are no vehicle households. And so it's really focused on areas where we're noticing transportation disadvantages. And again, it includes demographic information. And a lot of our traffic crashes, if you look at the individual crash points that represent the high injury network, a majority of those are in these transportation equity emphasis areas. And we can drill down further to get exactly at the race and location information.
Are you able to, you may not be able to answer this now, but are you able to identify the most dangerous point? Like, let's say the data says Black people is overwhelmingly represented in these fatalities or these crashes. And are you able to take that data in its most extreme point, and then where crashes are happening in the city, most extreme point, and pinpoint that at a cross?
We could probably get a handful of those locations, identifying just one. It'd probably be like a top 10 sort of analysis that we could.
I'd love that, because I don't want to have these conversations in isolation. We talk about Roxborough, Mangum, Gregson, and Duke, and then we have this data, and I just want to make sure that those conversations aren't in isolation because of who's speaking up for them. I want to make sure that we're actually addressing the problem. So if I could get that, and also, what would you all say in layman terms, the barriers that we are facing to address these problems? Because I also don't want Vision Zero to just be a vision. I want it to be a vision that delivers action. And I still don't feel like I can like verbalize or articulate step 1, step 2, step 3 to activate this plan and actually have some delivery with it. And maybe that's just my lack of competency. I don't know, but like, is it like, where are the barriers basically? Is it budget? Is it money? Is it DOT? Is it, advocacy? What?
Yes. Yeah, so I will say, Robin mentioned this not as just a thing to say, but very true. This can't be a Vision Zero coordinator only effort. This can't be a transportation department only leading it. Every department at the city and our partners need to be given the tools to actually lead on implementing Vision Zero. And I can't say that we are there yet. We're building the working group, the coalition. We've got momentum, we have a plan, we have a strategy, we know where to focus, but it's about all of us stepping up to actually implement what's in the plan. And I don't think that we have all of the tools and the staff to do that yet. So we need to work on that. I would say that is probably one of the biggest barriers.
All right, so because as an elected official, I have a growing frustration with how long it takes things to get done. So if I think the easier, the better it's articulated on what I can understand, the better I can advocate for it. And sometimes, it just means, look, we need A, B, C, D, and E.
Right.
And we can move from there. So you need staffing, then we can say, all right, we need this. And I personally, because I think gun violence is such a huge issue in the city, like, I'm looking at this model to actually look at how we can address other issues. And the only difference I see in having a Vision Zero for gun violence and a Vision Zero for transportation is the city owns all the transportation, where gun violence is a multi-agency thing. So we can figure this out. I'm letting you know now, I'm gonna steal this model and take it to other areas. So I need us to kind of hurry up.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say the first thing that I identified, the staffing, the resources. The second thing is knowing where our priorities are. And so I'm hopeful that with this high injury network, this is our priorities. There are a lot of other areas that have safety needs and concerns that are valid. And if we continue to use the model that we have, which is dedicating a lot of time to each and every one of those, we are not going to reach zero. So we really have to focus and say no to some things and say yes to every opportunity, funding mechanism, staffing to address what you're seeing on this map in the high injury network, and even drilling down further. So that's our immediate next step, is to, of this, what is the highest of the high?
Thank you. I think leaving this meeting, what I'd love to have most, Madam Chair, is just that cross point, the top 10 or top 5.
Specific to race, can I clarify that? Or
Well, I mean, it don't even have to be black, it could be yellow, but whoever the top demographic is, which happens to be black, and wherever the highest concentration of accidents, and it may not be the most accidents, it could be, we have 20 accidents on this street, but only, I don't know, it could be the most extremes may be in two separate points. And I'm trying to find out where they are, where are the most people getting killed,
Gotcha.
whatever that is,
Okay.
and itemize that. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
'Cause I think that would be the data that sort of helps us drive what we do next.
I mean, it seems to me that we have that
Thank you.
data. I mean, I've skimmed the plan a long time ago. So we've had presentations again at the MPO on Vision Zero and, regionally, and it's been very specific to roads and intersections. So I know you have that data. So I think what the mayor is asking for is absolutely doable. I mean, the bad news and the good news is that 10% of the roads are accounting for 74% of the problem here. And so that makes it something that we can actually address. So I think what you're asking for is that this is what you all have done is you've studied the roadways and we have that data. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and you may hear more about the intersection specific, which I think is what you're getting at, Mayor, from the MPO during their presentation,
Yes.
because they've done that
yeah,
analysis.
so I have seen that data. So, yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think those are great points and questions raised by the mayor. And I also support Vision Zero for gun violence because these are the two biggest killers of young people is traffic and guns. I mean, these are the two biggest killers. I mean, they compete with each other each year, which one is killing more people. So we really do need to look at both of them and prioritize both of them. But one of my favorite things about this plan is this slide because it lays out the timeline and it just shows here's what we're going to do. And I think what I love about it too is it's really looking at some of the low hanging fruit, and some of the low hanging fruit is we have on paper standards today that are not safe and that are not as safe as new knowledge in the transportation field would have us. And so we can improve and bring in line the standards that we have on paper into best practices. Some of the, I think what we're building so rapidly, and as you mentioned, on a per capita basis, we're losing more and more people. So that means that as we're growing, we're losing per capita more people. So the streets that we're building are also, and the way that we're building is also unsafe. And so without this, we could also be saying potentially that if we continued with sort of the business as usual approach to the way that we're growing our city, is that some of our most dangerous streets could be in the future. And so step number one is avoid that. And step number two is pursue, to the mayor's point, pursue the hard work of fixing the existing streets. And a lot of these streets with high death counts are also kind of more walkable. You have more pedestrians and they're obviously very vulnerable. And so there's a little bit of correlation there as well. So the solution is not to not make things walkable, because that also is the crux of the problem, getting more cars on the road. So, but I love this chart that lays out each of the steps when they're intended to happen. Obviously, you make a plan, life happens, but kind of has that all laid out. And I like the idea of kind of honing in on what are these top 10, you mentioned this, what are these like top 10 most dangerous intersections? I think it'd be interesting to look at that and why are they dangerous too? I think that would be design wise and speed wise and everything. So, all right, I'm talking too much. Thank you.
No, great conversation, great comments. This is very important. I have a few follow-up points I want to make and a few questions. To the mayor's point, this is, there is an overlap between gun violence and people literally being killed crossing the street in Durham. We just had a pedestrian fatality, I believe, over the weekend. Again, it's over and over again. We see it's a racial and economic disparity issue. It's in parts of our community where people are walking more because they don't have cars or because, yeah. And, you know, this is a historic issue. We have built our roads for cars, not for people. And it's been this way since the evolution of the automobile and, you know, how we, you know, the history of how we've done land use in this country around cars. And we're not going to get a different outcome unless we start building things differently, if we start building our roads for people. And so I think we've kind of danced around the issue of that we have to have collaboration with NCDOT on this. This is a systems issue. And, you know, a lot of our roads, some are built by the city and controlled by the city, some are controlled by NCDOT. So we are going to need to bring everyone on board. And I think that's why it will be important when we hear from the MPO on this, because with our MTP, our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, like that's the NCDOT is part of that plan, right? And the federal government. So we have to all be moving in the same direction. When we talk about not measuring, you know, reducing vehicle miles traveled, and I love this changing from a TI said, but we are going to need everyone to be moving in the same direction on this. And the first step has got to be our UDO and what we're requiring. So one of my questions is, does it seem like we have support in both the city and the county budget for this? Do we know where we're at with the multimodal transportation impact analysis? Because that seems critical. We're not going to move forward if we don't have this as a policy.
Yeah, I have not gotten word yet on what actually has made it into the final budget on the city side. So I can inquire and find out where that is.
Okay, but it's just on the county side too, because this is jointly funded in the work plan.
Right, but under the interlocal agreement, our budget travels through the city
Okay.
budget process, so it has to
Okay.
be included there.
Okay.
Yep.
So I would just say to my colleagues, we have to make sure that this gets funded. It's just, these are the two fundamental things to move forward. If we're talking about what do we need to do. I'm also wondering, there was a mention about developing a quick build safety program. What does that mean? What is a quick build safety program?
Yeah, so it is a way for us to more rapidly address safety concerns. So rather than a total street redesign or reconstructing a road to make it safer, there are ways that we can retrofit, sort of go out there on the corridor using lower cost materials like some paint and flexible posts, which you've probably already seen around Durham, some of those types of materials to address intersections to make them safer, shorter crossing distances, slow cars down when they're turning, things like road diets, so a simple restriping of a roadway when we notice there's an opportunity to resurface. That might not be necessarily a quick build, but when that resurfacing opportunity comes up, we have a redesign ready to go. But the quick build program would be a few different departments here at the city working to identify areas starting with the high injury network, to then say within about a year, we want to work with the community to address the safety concerns along this corridor using those types of materials. So engagement is shorter, the design process is quicker. We already have some standard designs that we could use, so we're not reinventing the wheel. That's what we're talking about when we say quick build.
Okay, so that's going to be critical for when we the retrofit part.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Mayor.
So what's the holdup on that, getting that done?
So we need a policy. We do not have a formal policy that says, here are the quick build tools. Like I mentioned some examples, but we need an agreement for us to do that. We need agreement with NCDOT on their roadways to address some of that. We also need the policy that says where, right? We can't do this everywhere. So is it the high injury network, or are we going to have additional criteria that says these neighborhoods are going to be our quick builds areas for round one? What does that look like? We just don't have that yet.
Who would draft that policy?
It would probably start with us in transportation, and we'd work with our Vision Zero working group to further vet it, work with NCDOT as well. But the plan, as outlined on this timeline, is to have something like that late this year or early in 2026.
Okay. The reason why I ask, when I-95 went down in Philadelphia, Governor Shapiro deemed it a state of emergency. It was projected to take about 2 years to rebuild. They did it in 2 weeks. When the Keystone Bridge went down in Baltimore, it was slated to take well over a year to rebuild. They deemed it a state of emergency, and it was back up in 6 months. My powers to deem something as a state of emergency as mayor is not like a home rule state. I don't think we have to govern by states of emergency or executive orders per se, but I do think that there's something in that tells us it is possible, and sometimes process becomes paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to speak up because now you're talking my language. I don't know, you can get it done quicker. I'm not saying you got to work overnight, but now we're talking. Thank you.
Thank you. So another one of my questions was, and I was just going to say, I think it's important that is done, like the retrofit part is super important in line with moving forward with changing our UDO and the design standards and everything. I'm wondering about the county, okay? So I know that the plan was focused within the city limits and that the roads outside of the incorporated areas are controlled by NCDOT. Are there, I mean, how can we also implement some of this within the county as well? I mean, where are the opportunities for that?
Yeah, I would say the MPO's work to develop a regional safety action plan that includes Durham County is a great place to start. They approved that plan just last 2 weeks ago. And so I think coordination with the MPO on the strategies identified in that regional safety plan, the coordination with NCDOT that was part of that regional safety plan is key. So that sort of group and momentum is there to start talking about how we might address those types of corridors and what does that look like. So I don't think we're starting from scratch with that. I don't know, Sean Egan, if he has any other thoughts on that level of coordination with the county and how we address those safety issues. But I do think that the MPO's work on the regional safety action plan is a great place to begin starting that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think especially around schools, we have a number of schools that are in the county. We have challenges around sidewalks, but especially for safety and connectivity around our schools. And I do want to lift up an issue, since Sean is sitting here, with the family responsibility zones. And we already have an issue that I'm our liaison for the county to the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And there's been a lot of concern. I know you got an email about this, Dr. Lee, around Hope Valley Elementary. And this is a Vision Zero problem where we have a school that now students are families are expected to walk to, and the roads are not built for that. And there's folks from the BPAC have been trying to get DPS, NCDOT, and the city together to come up with some very easy solutions, and it's been impossible. So I'm going to ask you, Sean, if you can help take the lead on that. We've got to show that we can actually do this stuff. And it's been, if we can't even do it around one school in a situation that's happening right now, then it doesn't, to the mayor's concerns, I don't know how we're going to get this done if people can't get together and come up with some common sense solutions right now, just for that one school. So I just want to lift that up here. And then related to the street design manual, really curious. I hope at some point, I know the city council has discussed this a lot. I don't know if it's really come here, or maybe I was not here at that meeting. Did that come here at all? The street design manual discussions or anything around? I guess the city adopted some new standards.
It's an action plan.
An action plan, okay. Okay. But I'm just wondering, for instance, what is the approach for, pedestrian and bike safety? It's how do we actually incorporate that into our street design? Is it through a multi-use path? Because it seems like, unfortunately, unless the bike and pedestrian facilities are separated from the cars, there's going to be higher risk.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to what that might look like.
Yeah.
So the street design manual would be really based on the context. So depending on the land use context and, the broader context, we would want to be able to prescribe a street design that fits that or fits the vision of what that neighborhood or context wants to see. So we're going to have a lot of different options for ways to incorporate pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure on your narrower neighborhood streets. That might look like a bike boulevard with lots of traffic calming, like speed cushions, or ways to make sure that drivers are going slow and it feels like a truly shared space for people of all ages and abilities. When you're talking about a more major corridor, yeah, we might want to consider that we build all types of bikeways behind the curb and not on the street, right? If we're building a new street, we should just incorporate that bike facility at the back of the curb. If we're talking about retrofit, we definitely want to standardize a protected bike facility on a major corridor. So definitely building on some of the standards that we have, but making sure there's enough flexibility that fits the context of Durham.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And I just want to address two other things. One is, you didn't talk about it here, but in the memo, talking about the importance of the transit opportunity areas, the TOAs that are part of our comp plan, and part of, the idea that we need to focus high density, mixed use, compact, walkable, bikeable, transit oriented development. And that there's going to be a tension between, having capacity on transit and then, increasing population, more crowding on our buses and things like that, and also around affordable housing. I would like to know how or see us make sure that we have policies that, or somewhat, what I would like to hear thoughts on how do we really identify publicly owned land that is in the TOAs, and how do we position the use of publicly owned land for affordable housing. Because we do have a lot of publicly owned land, and I'm not sure that that's really being focused on enough, and how we really leverage that because, honestly, if we come up with these incredible mixed use dense neighborhoods and only a certain economic group can afford to live in them, then we will not have achieved our goals in our community. And so I just want to raise that and ask, how are we really prioritizing the publicly owned land as we move forward with the UDO and all these policies?
So I'm Sean Egan, City Transportation Director. There's a really interesting project underway looking at housing affordability and production. It's being led by the Durham Chamber Foundation. And one of the key, I think you attended the briefing last month, and I think the mayor was there as well. But one of the key focus areas of that is making the best possible use of publicly owned or publicly controlled land. So that effort is getting ready to bring forward some recommendations. So we'll be paying very close attention to those recommendations, and planning staff, Aaron, has been involved in that as well. So we'll be looking at that. I'd also say that this is a good opportunity to promote that we are updating the bike and walk plan right now. So looking at our efforts, right now we have a lot of segments of bicycle facilities and segments of sidewalks, but we really need an interconnected network of bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And so that's one of the goals of the update to the bike and walk plan. So you can learn more about the progress. There's a ramp up this summer for engagement around that. You can learn about it at engagedurham.com. And so we're going to continue to work through that plan. And a lot of those missing links in the network, for example, on East Club Boulevard by the Club Boulevard community, there's a missing sidewalk segment along the Route 9 transit route. That project is funded by the bond that was passed by Durham voters in November of last year with a 75% approval. So we're not waiting until the plan to get to work. We're getting ready to bid that East Club sidewalk project for construction right now. So we're not waiting for that plan, but that plan will really clarify and prioritize a lot of those missing links in the bicycle and pedestrian network. And then we are looking at some peer examples of how to make sure that we're not overwhelming the transit system with the demand for services as we focus our land use and we densify land use. We have to make sure that there's sufficient capacity in the transit system. And we have a very severe overcrowding problem in our system right now. So we're looking at examples and be happy to bring that back of how peer cities and transit agencies measure capacity and really model how we need to grow that capacity, system capacity, so that as the UDO is successful in densifying and creating more opportunities for affordable housing along transit routes, it doesn't overwhelm the transit system.
It's a good problem to have, though.
It is.
And lastly, I want to put in a plug for education and changes in behavior. Years ago, when my daughter was in law school in Berkeley, California, I will never forget. I was standing on the edge of a crosswalk looking at my phone, and then I looked up and I realized that all of the traffic had stopped. And people were just waiting for me to cross the street, and it was shocking. People's behavior really can change. And I just recently came back from spending 3 weeks in Japan, and it was fascinating to see how behavior on packed buses and trains really impacts your experience. I have little videos that I took where people are like sardines on a train or a bus, and it is so peaceful because you can hear a pin drop. Nobody is talking, nobody's playing music on their phones, and people are very respectful. And so it makes being crowded on a bus or a train a whole lot more pleasant, just people's respecting each other. Anyway, people do behave differently in other parts of the world. It's possible in different parts of our country. No, in Japan,
It was like that in London 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Right. So I think that is also, being in crowded spaces in transit, you can be very stressful because of the things that people are doing that impact other people. And I think that it's not a bad idea. I mean, there's massive overkill of signage in Japan, but literally, pictorial, because most people don't even know English, that really emphasizes appropriate behavior and respecting other people. And so we can learn from that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I am the culprit who said that education didn't matter, and that's not quite what I meant. So I apologize that way. I'm not going to look at Lauren or Sean. I am just like firmly a policy person first. But arguably, I'm just sort of getting at the fact that it's that built environment influences that behavior. So getting into that, but I do apologize for that.
Yes. No.
And to your other point about the transit opportunity areas, I think is a great point. I just wanted to add really quickly that I don't know much about the publicly owned lands. That's still a larger question, but one of the strategies for those residential zoning districts in the new UDO, specifically the RD and then the RX and the CX districts, is that they have the sort of height cap, which then can be exceeded by providing either smaller units or affordable units. And we've tried to strategically create something that incentivizes development to provide more affordable units by right, or smaller units that are, artificially more affordable if you're charging by square footage. Trying to do what we can sort of in the legal framework within those transit opportunity areas, because I don't want ARIN to get mad at me.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to UDO engagement update with Lisa Miller.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Miller with the Planning Department. Just have a brief item to share some information with you all about upcoming engagement. In this space, you all have gotten a kind of trickle of content that is under the Module 2 umbrella of work that we're getting from the technical consultant. And as there's been some back and forth, some additions and updates to that, we're now have that published for the community to review, and some specific opportunities to get some input and share information on that. So just wanted to share a little bit about that with you all. Thank you. So just a quick reminder, kind of the structure of the way that we're doing this work. We've got our technical consultant, Code Studio, creating the draft content in concert with staff. We have our planning staff that's handling project management and kind of the broad engagement across the community. And then we're continuing to work with Tawana Allen on focused engagement through engagement ambassadors. So that approach continues. And we've got these, additionally, we're continuing these main ways that we are doing engagement. So one of the things that's included in your packet are flyers. That's kind of a save the date of things that are happening over the next month and a half that are engagement opportunities around the Module 2 content, the development standards. So that includes virtual engagement, in-person engagement. We've had a lot of interest and success with the staff office hours in the library, so we're expanding and doing a few more locations in the community specific to this engagement. We are, as I mentioned, continuing to work with engagement ambassadors through Tawana's work. and have ongoing conversations and presentations to boards, stakeholders, different folks to make sure that they are getting information and questions answered as well. So these flyers are, like I said, in the packet. We would love your help sharing this information with community members, helping us get folks to come out. We have a bunch of information on the project website right now. So one of the things y'all may recall we've been doing code connects are the things that the technical consultant is doing, kind of running through the content and doing a question and answer session. For this round, we've actually split that apart. There's currently a recording that they created running through the content that we're pushing out as part of this save the date information. So anybody can go watch that walkthrough. It's about 38 minutes, I think, of the content that's included. And then we'll be doing basically the second part of that Code Connect will be just a Q&A with the technical consultants the beginning of next month. So that recording is up on the website. The links to register for the virtual meeting, in-person meeting, and the Q&A are up on the website and on the flyer here. There's a single PDF of with linked table of contents to kind of peruse the development standards content. We will be adding some additional engagement materials up on the site over the next week or two. And so all of that is up and being pushed out in connection with communications with the city and county, our Engage Durham website and newsletter and all of that. So just a little bit more information about the engagement ambassadors work. We did, after the first round of engagement on draft content in the fall, had a chance to get some feedback from the engagement ambassadors who participated to better understand how we can, with what is a whole lot of content and pretty technical content, better work with them to reach folks that they're connected to within our community and our focus communities and focused efforts on reaching those folks with lived experiences and identities that we need to do more to connect with and build trust. So we have redesigned our approach based on that, adjusted kind of the roles and stipends associated with that, reconnected with everybody who participated in the fall or indicated interest last summer. We've had more interest in participating with the revised approach that we're working through. And we'll have a training either next week or the week after with them for the engagement approach. And that work is continuing to be coordinated with the kind of broader engagement that we're leading as staff and the work coming from Code Studio. I think that is all I wanted to share. I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, Bo, if there's anything I should have said that I didn't, feel free to remind me.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and I appreciate the ongoing engagement that the planning department does at the library. It's amazing, and that the way that you all are offering both virtual and in person, and of course the equitable engagement. So thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much. We're making progress, right? Okay, and item number 7, HPC interlocal agreement. Carla Rosenberg.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, Carla Rosenberg with the Planning Department. This item, actually, I'd ask for you to not take any action today and refer back to staff. We discovered an issue that we need to address, and you'll be seeing it again soon. So,
okay, are there any comments or questions? This is the Historic Preservation Commission, the interlocal agreement between the city and the county. Just has some updated revisions. I guess, when was the last time that you all had made revisions?
I think it was in the 90s. It was
a while ago.
It was a long time ago.
It was a while ago. So, yes. Any comments, questions?
So we'll bring this back in its hopeful final form, I think, next month.
We have it scheduled tentatively for next
Okay.
month.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from, oh, yes.
So,
Yes,
Madam Chair,
Commissioner.
so this is coming back next month, but will we get this far enough in advance? Like the normal due course, passing along of information is not wide enough for me. I'd like to have a little bit more time, so if we can get that, well in advance of the meeting, that'd be helpful.
So we normally post everything a week before. How much further in advance would
10
you?
days, please.
Just for this item?
Yes.
Okay. We'll send that out in
I'd like to
advance.
give this some due diligence.
We have an attorney here. Commissioner Attorney. Okay, and Sarah, I don't know if you had anything else before we adjourn?
I just want to welcome Chesney Upchurch, who is here with us today, shadowing Joe. Joe will be on vacation to the homeland, I believe, next month. So while she's in jolly old England, Chesney will be sitting in. So just want to welcome Chesney. She is our clerk to our quasi judicial boards, Board of Adjustment and the Historic Preservation Commission. So she's not a stranger to clerking, but just a new face for you all.
And you've got some tough clerking
Yeah.
that you do too. Yes. And our next meeting is June. I always like to.
Start putting that on the.
Yeah, I think it's good to remind us since we are meeting monthly.
June 4th.
Okay, our next meeting is June 4th and we are now adjourned. Have a great day, everyone. What is? Oh, June 4th. And she'll be,
It's young.
wow.